Again. So this is webinar number 63 on May 10th. After like a nice short end-colon discussion with Uncle Pete, we now have Glenn, who's going to help us imagine more possibilities within WX. So Glenn, have at it.
Thanks.
Thanks again.
I wanted to go over something we had covered last week just briefly, and how I extended functionality even more. And it has to do with the query by examples that you would hand code. And I wanted to be able to not only do the order by, but select the order that they're happening in, and then also mix whether they're going to be ascending or descending. So let me run this and just make the demonstration. Okay. So we'll select last name, and now we have the option so you can specify ascending or descending. We can also specify that we want occupation, and you see on the right hand side of there we've got number 1 and number 2, so that's the order that they will sort by. So let's go ahead and run this. We'll do last name descending, and if it all works, there's our last name column in descending order. And now I'll say I want to do occupation, and by default it will be ascending, so let's resort that. And I'm going to actually change that now and do all. And you can see how our sorting is changing here. And also, if we unclick last name, I want to put it in position 2 instead of position 1. And we can run that, and it resorts again. So, you know, the code behind the last name and occupation checkbox is ascending, descending. There's nothing special about that. That's just managing your checkboxes and making sure they're either on or off. But the key to having your dynamic sort order, because this table and also the report that runs from this, let's go look at the content. I will click on the table. The content you can see is coming from a query. Query people get. And so now if I look over here at query people get, go to the code for that, you'll see that here is my order by clause. And you can see that that's using a parameter for the order by, and so if I don't supply anything to it, it just doesn't get executed, and the order by does not produce an error in the SQL statement. Right? Otherwise, if I do present the parameter for sort by, and that would be my last name comma occupation, or occupation comma last name, and so I can put them in what order I need, and this is the key to sorting that that query. And so it works exactly the same way as we pass any parameters for any of the query itself. So if I look at the code behind here, right, here's how we normally would set up our parameters. You know, we're either going to pass a null so it gets ignored, or we're going to actually pass it a parameter. And then down here, I'm actually returning my get order by just using a procedure that I created. And we'll just come down here, and I can actually put it in the order. I'm reading if it's a 1, then I know which field to put first. If it's a 2, I know what field to put second, vice versa, and flip them around. So really all I do is I return my order by clause here, and I put it right here in the parameter. The other thing that I did is I figured as long as I have it here, I'd like to also have it in my QBE example that you reuse with one line of code. And that's located again for here in this generic export. So if let me go select a table, people, QBE. Here's the QBE that we ran last week. And you'll notice there's no sorting capabilities in here. If I turn it on this way, now I have 2 additional columns, so I can do ascending and descending. So I could pick last name. Let's do this. Last name is different from A. And we're going to sort on the first name for whatever reason. That would make sense or not make sense. And here we go. Here's our field. Here's the column we're sorting by is by the first name in an ascending order. Now, the next thing that I want to actually put in here is I want to have a column to the far right, and we can order them in what specific order we want these selected fields to be ordered by. Right now, it's just from top to bottom, so I need to change that. So what I'm really wanting to show is the possibility of a couple things with this, of how you hard code and hand code your query by examples, how you can reuse this example. But the key to that, both of them, is how you actually have a parameter for doing your order by within your query. That can be completely dynamic. And as long as we're on this screen, I wanted to also go over just one thing, because we mentioned it last week a bit. It's this BuildBrowseTable, which is just so very powerful. Let's go back here. On the screen, you can see that I have a table with just one column, because you have to have one column at least created in the table to create the table. And I just happen to have it hidden in here. So you can see that there's no content to it. It's all done by programming. I don't have any additional columns for linking to my data. And yet, if I run this and I say I want, we'll select people again, and I want to return all the records, okay. Now it just populated that. You see how it created the columns and then populated all the records. And all of that is done with this one line of code. So that's really powerful. And what becomes nice is if we just do it on a table itself as opposed to a SQL statement, we can actually use that for an EIP if we like and have it tied back to your table. So with one browse table, browse form, you could actually use that for maintenance, if that makes sense. Or at least it would be for your browsers, that you can just have one for all your data without having to
have... when you're done, I'm going to show that in a practical work.
Cool.
I got to sign on the other one.
Okay, I got
about 2 minutes, Arnold. I'm just going to show how to use that BuildBrowseTable in a practical application.
Cool.
I'm just going to tie it on the end of this, Arnold, not a new one.
Let me just go back quickly, because there's just two things. We'll go to the browse table, and I'll show them the different ways that I implement it, and then you being able to show a practical example will be really cool. We can, I don't want to do this one. Let's do go browse table. Well, maybe I do. Okay. In here, what I'm doing is I'm supplying just a SQL statement. So not only can we do a BuildBrowseTable based on a particular table we have, but we can also do that based on SQL statements and returning back those values. And in here, we've got two tables that are joined together. And so now it's going out to the state table and linking them together. So that's really cool, because now your one table can have many joins from your SQL statement and present the data. My last thing that I wanted to show is I had to do a really small project that had to do with, and a major part of it is being able to sort the data or select the data based on time periods. And I'm thinking, man, I got to go through each one of those, and I've got to figure out the calculation for what's the date, how to do the floating week or the floating month or the current month and those kinds of things. So let's look at, I will click on yesterday, and you'll see my two edit boxes on top change to different values. You now saw that it went to the 9th. And I will select the current year, and it will go from 01/01 to 5/10 of this month. So every period in here is doing some kind of filtering. And so what it is, what I found, let's close this. And so we're wizards and components. Let's go to preset controls and actually super controls. we actually have entering a period. And that, I'll put it out here again. Well, now here. And in that, you have all of your code. And so I did not have to change one thing to be able to do that. And how they implemented that is, this is a button right here. And pop-up menu, predefined date. So this is the pop-up they call from that button to display each of these different time periods. And then if we select a time period, a menu choice, and do F2 to look at the code, here's all the code that comes in with the super control. So I just saved myself tons of time of having to define what each of those values are, each of those time periods. And then all I ever had to do is take these two text boxes and enter them into my parameters for my query, and I'm done. So I'm just guessing it saved me at least 2 hours, maybe 4 hours. I don't know. Anyway, it's just a nice way to get time periods done without having to code any of that. And which brings up a good point, or another point. They have some really good controls built in here, whether it's a super control or it's some kind of button that they have that's already predefined and it's got code behind it, or the visual representation of it. So I wholeheartedly suggest looking at the controls and the examples and the components that they have. Any questions?
Back to the browsing table. It's been a while since I played with it, Glenn.
Yeah.
If you use the hyperfile one, does it get the captions out of the analysis?
Yes. Yep.
Which is another reason that doing that extra work in the analysis pays off.
It does. It does. Yeah. And what also is a nice point, which kind of leads me to that, is when you do SQL, is if you do like L_name as first a name, then I can use those column headings in here if I want to. So I actually have another checkbox in my QBE that says use the alias from SQL. Okay. Now, that's my presentation for today, but I want to put a little hook in for next week, as I will have a presentation on address validation, where you can enter in the minimal amount of an address and have it come back and validate it. And if there's multiple addresses, it will return a list of multiple addresses. So if I put in an example, 300 State Street, Chicago, Illinois, or 300 State Street, 60606, it will come back and show me that there's a 300 North and a 300 South State Street.
Oh.
Or if I put in 326 Fallon 63376, it will come back and tell me that it's 326 Fallon Parkway, St. Peters, Missouri, and give me the county and everything. And that's all without having to purchase a list that you have to maintain, or not even hitting the UPS or USPS website. Of course, there is a little API that we have to call and make use of and perhaps purchase, but we will go through that next week.
All right.
Hey, so these controls that you show down here, if you're in WebDev, would there be a different set of controls?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they'd be a different set. What makes sense on the web and what they've implemented. And that also brings up a good cross-reference point in this BuildBrowseTable that we just saw. Let me go over here, actually. That does not exist in WebDev, at least not up until version 18. And I still don't think it's there. But let me just grab this quickly. Okay. And let's run this. Okay. What I want to do is...
Yeah, it's still not there on the web.
Yeah. Yeah, the web's lagging behind, but I tell you, I continue to be amazed.
I think it's going to be a little difficult to do that on the web, but I guess it's possible.
Data access. build browse table, generic, build inline all fields. So I've overcome their shortcoming and have been able to work through building the browse table through my own code.
You ought to send that to them. Maybe they'll do it for us.
That would, then I can take one example out. But I love doing stuff like that.
You can leave the example in, just show how you can do it two ways, your way or the higher.
I say in the old way, we did it this way. Now we can do it with one line of code.
Well, the only
And
reason
save
I
two.
did that, the only reason I said that is because I built that thing to go out to Google Translate to bring me back Spanish, and the next frickin' version they get it as part of the translation.
I know. Oh, and right.
Yeah.
Right. Have you?
Yeah, Ben did that to me this week. I can't remember what we were talking about, but he talked about some new command that was in version 18. It's like, son of a bitch, I wrote that command today for version 17.
You know, they have a webcam over your head.
That's what it is. Somebody's, logging into my machine at night and saying, "Oh, what's he been working on?" What?
Cool. Alrighty, that's it for me.
Okay. If you'll pop off to me, over to me, I'll show them that the deal in practical example. The build browse.
He just needs to go off, then you can share.
That was texting for stop sharing your screen.
Yeah,
Glenn.
Glenn. Stop sharing your screen so I can start sharing mine.
Got it.
Got
it.
Cool. And there we go. What you should be looking at is my little utility that I'm currently still working on, but what you see is a utility here that shows me any of the databases that I currently attach to. I have databases for all the different areas, both Postgres and MS SQL. Okay, so I go into one, I can pick a database that I want to look at, and it gives me all of the table information. I've got the create table, I've got this. The difference is that when I want to do queries, I want to take a look at different things in this project. I can actually go out there and tell it, okay, I want to create me an SQL statement. As you can see, this is all blank down here, and I can come in here and go select asterisk from project item. When I hit my F5, which I've got set up, you'll see that it brings in each of the headers exactly what the system wants to see. Where this really comes powerful is if I want another one, I can do a select asterisk from project area. And hit it. And I say, okay, well, there's my project area ones. I got the leader, I got all the fields there, and I can say, well, I really want to see the project sysid, area, short, description as short, and just see those two. Now I come back with only those two. It automatically changes those, okay? MS SQL, I can do a few other things with it, so let's go to my local laptop. Hopefully this, yeah, it should work. So I come into here, I get the database stuff from here. And I can destroy these too. This is also showing the control clone stuff as well, by the way. So, now that I'm selected to it, I can do a select asterisk from parts. Now, I just switched total tables here. I just switched connections from a Postgres to a MS SQL. That's two different connections right off the bat. And you can see I'm pulling back the information from here. So if I want to now give me just a few bits of this, I can say, give me the par model as model. var rim as rim. And where var tread where equals 400. And hit that. And now I just have those items in here is all I have. Okay? And I can still squeeze it down. I can look at everything that I want. And that's it in a practical example. That's using it in a practical example. The build browse table is really powerful. Okay? It really is powerful stuff. It really allows me to go a long ways with this, because what I'm using this for is I'm pulling up my column list, and I've got all the columns out of the database defined, so I can just cut and paste those into my classes and stuff, and things like this. I cheat, and I can go faster that way. So it's actually pretty cool. That's it.
Can I show one more
Yeah,
thing?
I use it. Yeah, go. I was going to say I use it. I've got a generic lookup that in my application. There's a lot of times where I'm doing a select part and it's an entry field, and they type part of the name. Well, I fire off a select statement for part with a like statement in it, and then I just pass that to my generic selection list. It does a build browsing of whatever I've selected and lets them select the specific record they want. And that's one generic lookup for my entire application. It's contacts, parts, whatever, because whatever data I send to it, it just throws it into a browse table and lets them select the specific record.
Oh, and one last thing about this little deal here, it absolutely has no analysis to it. It doesn't know what the database structure is at all. It determines the database structure when I connect. So it's got no idea what it is. It's none of it's in the analysis at all.
So it pulls up anything it needs, like header and all that from the database.
The only thing that's in the analysis in this is there's a list of servers that I got where I set up the server name so I know which ones to pick from. That's the only file in the analysis. All the rest of the stuff here is all based upon going up there. There's a set of tables that show all the definitions of the database. And I'm pulling all that information from those tables to display, and then you select. So to me, that's the big powerful thing. I'm not actually creating any tables to hold that information at all. The stuff you saw there, it's all pulling it up dynamically through the statements, and just makes it really, really powerful to work with, and makes it easy to work with. And when I actually get done with that little utility, it will give you, it's going to give the ability for us to translate data and translate entire systems between Postgres and MS SQL. I'm going to try to hook in Hyperfile with it too, things like this, but it's going to help me get faster and easier on the development systems that I put together. That's what it's for. I'm trying to replace pgadmin 3.
Yeah, well, on a typical day, I wind up having all three open several times.
Yeah.
Hyperfile, SQL Console, pgadmin, and SQL Manager. So just having one tool for all three, that's 2 extra programs I'm not running.
I'm getting closer to being ready to give it to Pete, but not quite yet.
Yeah, because he knows once he gives it to me, I'll start whining.
He'll start whining like a little girl. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?
Yeah, I haven't even put in my IntelliSense request yet.
You got to have sense first. Yeah.
So, Glenn, what were you going to show us?
I just want to do a because I liked Andy's presentation there of the real world example for that, and this is actually going back to our example from last week, and I don't know how clear I made that, but this again is that build browse table because that's what we've been looking at this morning. Now, as opposed to Andy's, where he's going out and not having to do anything from the analysis, which is dynamic and getting the data, we're going to our analysis and we're getting all the columns. And then when I do the QBE, and let's do that last name again, different from A, so I can get all my records, execute, don't save it. And so now at this point, if I turn, in fact, I'm going to have to run that. Well, okay. So there's the data that I had, and I ran a query on it. And then at this point, if I actually want to do my export, so this is another real world example of taking the build browse table and then actually exporting your data. So your users can export any of the data they want and then slice
Okay,
and
so
dice it.
I'll give you a task here, Glenn, okay?
Yeah.
You figure out for me.
Is this my homework?
This is your homework, because you're all into this part. Figure out how to interrogate the hyperfile client server, so the database structure, without having an analysis.
As an external.
Yeah, so that way basically I can do the exact same thing I'm doing with these other two databases with hyperfile.
Okay. I'll put that as a challenge,
that's a challenge, because that's the one thing, the ANSI standards for databases says there has to be an information schema, okay? And where I go into is I look through the databases and I go get that information schema, which is basically the entire definition of how the database is put together, okay? It takes a little while to figure out where everything is, but once you figure out where everything is, you can do what I'm doing here. And I'm going to do the same thing with MySQL and stuff like that. The deal is that I don't know how to do that, or I don't see a readily available way to do that with hyperfile client server. But since now that because of one individual, and he shall remain nameless, and no, it's nobody in this group, has conned me into hosting SCM databases on my services up there, as well as databases for hyperfile, that would come in handy for those hyperfile client server databases up there on the server. Okay? So as a blatant plug, we are hosting on a SANS network SCM databases now. So you can have your SCM, personal SCM, on a SANS network. It gets backed up daily on the out there on the cloud, if you want. We're doing that, which is cool.
It is very cool. I no longer would have to worry about my box inside going up and down. I can just put it out there and let you worry about it.
Yeah. Yep. And for $10 a month, that ain't bad.
That's not bad, no.
Is there any size limitations, Andy?
If you get past a couple of gigs, we'd probably want to talk. But right now, I really, unless somebody's really got a bunch of stuff up there, I haven't seen the size of an SCM get past, 15 or 20 megs right now.
I think you'll be safe with Arnold, Andy. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have several gig of WX code.
So
a couple of K.
Yeah, it compresses it pretty good. So I just don't see it.
Tight
code. I don't see it getting that huge. I've got hyperfile up there, which I'm giving. There's about the hyperfile client server. You can have 10 gigs of data before we charge a little bit more. But that's mainly used for the websites and stuff that you want to have there. I guess you could use it externally as well, but mainly that one, the cloud hyperfile client server, is mainly geared towards if you have a website over there that you're running hyperfile client server on. That's what it's for.
So cool. Well, Glenn, were you going to show more? You popped something up there. Were you going to show something else, or are you done?
I'm done.
Cool. Well, what a way to start Mother's Day weekend.
Have a safe trip.
Kind of like 3 webinars.
Have yourself a safe
That's
trip.
me clapping.
Be careful.
Take care, y'all.
Be good
I'm
and
going to
be
stop
good at it.
recording. Yo, thank you, 3 of you.